All right, welcome everyone. This is our first video for Rethink Social Church, and our whole goal is to get you to rethink the way you do social media at church. Our tagline is connect with your community online. My name is Robbie, and I'm joined with Haley and Kiafa. And so today we wanted to talk about something a little different, maybe than social media, but it's going to tie into that quite a bit. So I'm going to hand it over to Kiafa because she's the one who actually had this idea.
So let's talk about, I think we spoke briefly about just knowing your congregation and what that means. So, like in the social media world, it's like everyone's always like, who are you talking to? Who's your audience? What are you saying? How do you say it? Because every audience is not created equal. So your audience may be different than somebody else's personally on your profile. But for churches, I think we just assume that we kind of have the same audience as every church, and that's not necessarily true. And so I wanted to just kind of challenge the narrative around rethinking how you talk to your congregation online. I guess my heart in this whole project is we have an incredible opportunity to use social media and video for church, for ministry. And I guess my heart is, how do we do that and be intentional about who we're talking to? And so when I work with like different people, one of the things that I try to get people to understand is like your online church may be different than your in-person church. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And so I guess for me, I wanted to just maybe ask you guys some questions about like, what do you think what do you think the number one thing we should know, or just what's important to you about knowing how to talk to your online community? And sometimes it's live, sometimes it's not, but how do you engage, or what's the best way or strategies that you think that we should use to engage with our online church? And I should say, when I say online church, I mean online congregation. That's what I should say, because I think that's the churchy word, is the congregation, and people will understand that. So what do you guys think?
Well, I think just even defining it as a congregation is different because when you think of online church, I know there's so many out there like Life Church, Elevation Church, that people might say we're a part of. I know you watch Transformation Church quite a bit. And so I think there's a difference between, hey, I just watch this sermon online and to I actively participate in what that church is doing. And you can do that from a distance. I have a friend that has a worldwide church, and they're starting now to go visit different people. So I think defining that is a little gray area because it's such a new concept because not many people, not many churches were online before the pandemic, and now after the pandemic, a lot more people are seeing the value in it. Uh, and so, just the difference between, hey, this is an online church, this is an online congregation.
Yeah. What do you think, Kaylee?
And I think though for because those are really big church examples of so like a lot of times their online community is going to be different than their in-person community. But for the local churches and for smaller churches or medium-sized churches, they're gonna have similar, they're the people who are coming online are also often in person, and so I think knowing that and knowing your community is a big part of knowing how to communicate to them online.
Yeah. I think that's true. And I feel like we take for granted sometimes that we're live streaming the service and it's great and it's wonderful, but then we kind of take for granted that the people online are getting the same experience as the people in person. And I think we have to rethink that, because let's say, I know, for instance, there's my home church back in Iowa. They do like a whole outline and they in their bulletins, and they have like note sections. So for churches that have an online community, how do you get them that same experience online by having, notes? Do you have something that they can download, or do you have something they can take a picture of and follow along? Those are kinds of things that I think about. The other thing is like it's more than just commenting like thanks for joining us. It's more than just liking, somebody that's come online. That's not really engagement. Engagement is more interacting with them through the conversation. So like, there are times where you'll see a question maybe pop up, while they're talking, or even afterwards, after the live stream, sometimes people go back through and they watch and they comment. It's really important to like have somebody designated to actually engage with that part of their church. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think Life Church does it really well, where they're like, they have, I said something about their onboarding for like volunteers. So the part of their volunteer base is strictly just for social media. So they'll have people go in and they've trained them. So don't just get people to go on and be like, oh, hey, they've trained them on how to interact with their social community online. So when there's a question that pops up, or when there's a prayer request or something that comes through, they're able to go in and actually monitor that and be like, okay, let me send you to this resource, or let me, answer this question, and hopefully this helps you. Or, just a quick thing about, let me pray for you or something. But you have to be conscious about engagement. And I feel like that's a scary word for churches because, marketing, it's a marketing concept, really. And so marketing is kind of a scary term for churches because we think it's too worldly. And I want to challenge that, because it's not. If you have a sign on your church that says who you are, you're marketing. So it's just a different way to look at it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what do y'all?
And I think like also along with engaging in the comments, it's important to like have that throughout the week too, like posting things that will be valuable to your online community throughout the week, and try to get to know them more online, more than just on a Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm. There are actually pockets of people that only do online now, and that's just the nature of the pandemic and what's happened. But also, when you said that, I was thinking, we've talked about this before, Haley, where it's like, we don't want to use our online platforms as just a billboard. Like that defeats the purpose of actually all of it. I mean, we should be really not just being like blasting our events or blasting our children's stuff. We should really have a clear message for our online community, because honestly, they're different. It's a different take on church. So
yeah, and I think that's my heart, is like, so many people just get lost in that scroll. They use social media as an outlet, or like, as a place to escape, or sometimes it's used for not great things. And like, I think being a light in that area is such an opportunity for churches and for other Christian organizations to just share the gospel and like stop that scroll and stop people from getting lost into what they're doing.
MVP! Left leg! Woo!
Okay.
Right leg! Not as
yes.
good! Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ted.
Sorry. Yeah. No, you were saying. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, and I feel like also when you're intentional about engaging with your online community, you actually reach new audiences. And I mean, that's the point, right? We want to identify what is the reason behind us going online, because when you're online, you're out there. So is it just to talk to our church, or is it to talk to others who want to know God and God's love? Are we intentionally thinking about that? I think that's the message that I struggle with a little bit, because I feel like it's so easy to try to just talk to the people in our church, but honestly, there's another avenue that we miss. We need to talk to people that may not even know. This may be the only Jesus that they see, you know? And so how do we actually engage or talk to um, other people that may not know Jesus? But we have to think about that. I think we maybe think about it, but sometimes it's like it gets lost in translation.
Yeah, and I don't think too many churches have thought about that avenue of, you're right, sometimes it's just a billboard of, hey, we have this event coming up, or here's a quick sermon clip. But I know all churches have a mission statement, a vision statement, and it just kind of becomes an extension of that. And so it's not just another tool to make announcements, it's a tool to get your message out. And so what is your mission statement? What is your vision statement? And how does that translate to online? Because that does look different than it would in person.
So practical ideas for engaging with your online church, I should say, through social media is a pre-show. So we know a few churches locally and nationally, if you want to say that, around the country that do really good jobs of engaging with their audience pre-service. So just priming them for what they like, maybe some announcements, or maybe some things that are coming up, or some things that are going on within the church that they want people to know, like service times. Like what I mean by service is like service opportunities. So like, hey, we're doing a trash day or something like that, or we're serving at, a local soup kitchen. This is what you should join us, or volunteer days or something like that. Those are really good ways to engage with your online community.
Great. I think I got it, but just in case, tell me the whole thing again. I wasn't listening.
So what is a pre-show? A pre-show is basically before the live service is streamed, you go online and you actually do just kind of like a pre-show, basically, kind of like a commercial before the actual service. And a lot of times what that looks like is usually it's 1 to 2 people, and they're engaging in a conversation about what they're excited about today, as far as what's coming up on this Sunday. It's baptism Sunday or something, so we're really excited. Maybe some testimonials about what God's been doing in their lives, or since they got saved, or something like that, to kind of prime the audience to get ready to watch church. So that's a pre-show. I've also seen churches do post shows where they have talked about just some highlights of the message at the end of the service, which is actually really a good way, because a lot of times after a sermon, I have questions. I don't know about y'all, but like sometimes I have questions like, what was that? What scripture was that? Or what did he mean or she mean by this message or this word? And so a lot of times those are really good ways to engage and keep them, and it doesn't have to be long. It could be like 5 minutes, if that. 3 minutes, 3 minutes seems really small, but when you're on camera, it seems like it's forever. But
yeah, and it really doesn't have to be complicated either. I was thinking about this. I've seen churches do it in the auditorium where they or wherever they have service. I've seen other churches do it where they're just in a different room completely, and then they run down and join service. Mm-hmm. You could even just pop on your iPhone
yep.
or Android if that's your persuasion, and just go live and just say, hey, we're starting service in 15 minutes, and we wanted to talk about we want to talk about what we're going to talk about and all these different things. And the same thing with the post show. I think I get into the bad habit of I have to have everything locked and loaded and perfected before I'll even start. And I feel like this video is a testament. Is we're just on Zoom and we're recording it and we're just trying to get a message out. We're not trying to be fancy right now. And you know, eventually that may grow and we may do it differently. But I think just getting started and being intentional about I want to do this is just a way to do it. And you can go, and I'm sure if you looked up a bunch of churches and like you said, Transformation Church, most churches have a pre-show or a post-show, and you can kind of get an idea, but don't be so, oh, we can never do that because we don't have the budget or we don't have the resources. I mean, if you have someone who's willing to get on camera and talk about your church and, you know, not say anything weird, then I think you can do it. And so,
yeah. This, you know, it's because I'm a social media metric nerd. The statistics around the authenticity of videos is huge. So what I mean by that is videos that are not like staged actually do better because they're more believable, if that makes sense. And so like when you were saying like, you know, the post show or the pre-show doesn't have to be some kind of fancy thing. You can actually use your own phone or whatever it is. You totally can do that. You could stand in the hallway of your church while people are coming in and say, hey, we're starting church today. We're so excited to see you. If you have a chance to get online. If you want to come, this, you know, those are like the authentic ways that you can do it without a budget. That's like a 15-second, 30-second video, and it didn't cost you anything except for 30 seconds of your time. So, and you don't even have to show your face. That's the other part, is you could just show the, you know, people walking in or just, you know, people in the hallway milling around, getting coffee, something, whatever it is. I feel like that's what you said, Robbie, is so key, because I think we get hung up on budget. We don't have the money, we don't have the budget, we don't have people, when you probably do have somebody that would be willing to do that. And you don't need any money. That's just my two cents.
And you may have someone that doesn't even know that's their skill set or talent.
Yeah.
Until they do it and they get on, you know, maybe they can't get on stage, but they can get in front of a phone and they're just fantastic.
I was not aware of that.
Do you think it's important to pray over what you're trying to do? We were talking about that in our last meeting, you guys, about like just be praying about our creativity and our ruts that we get into. Because it's real. And, you know, when you think about it, God is the most creative thing in the world because he created everything. And so it's like he gave us part of that in him because we are made in his image. And so that's like, obviously, we're going to have some type of creative ability. Now, your creativity is going to look different than mine. But the fact of the matter is that when we get into those like ruts, or we get into those, you know, those worries about, is this going to be creative enough, or is this going to be engaging enough, or people are going to like this? I think we need to pray about that. I think if we have intentionality about praying about what we want to see, as you know, aligning with God's will, of course, but what we want to see and what is the mission of our online church, I think God will open those doors for you. And I've seen it in my own life, just really praying about some things, and then him just showing me through other people, through this group, to, you know, together. I mean, we'll have to share our story one day, but yeah,
and not to jump into that, but really and truly, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah. To add on to that though, like, good group started this. We all felt like God was calling us to it, and we knew it was going to be slow going. But man, it's like we made a post, and then for a week or two, all your kids got sick. We all got sick. Things just kind of happened. I mean, even to start this video, your computer wasn't working. I didn't sleep well last night, and then the recording was just, we're freaking out about it. So it's one of those things too, you have to be careful, because when you say yeah, I do believe God's going to open doors, but I also think that if this is something intentional, you're getting the message of the gospel out. Satan doesn't want that, and so you're going to have a lot of hiccups, and it's real easy to be like, no, this isn't what we need to do, instead of just, and maybe it's not. I mean, we're not saying that, because no church is one size fits all. And so you don't need to base your church off of what other church is doing. You need to really do what God is calling you to do, and you can only do that through prayer, which I think we would all agree on. But I think there are times when you're praying about it, and you're still going to get attacked, and you're still going to have hiccups, and you're still going to have issues. And you have to discern whether, am I going to push through this and continue to do it? Do I really feel like God is telling us to do this, or is it something that we just don't need to do at the time?
Yeah. And you're right. It's the enemy not wanting us to get that across. You know, there's a part of that spiritual warfare that, I mean, because it's a ministry. I think we all view this as a ministry, and our heart is to help churches be able to get the gospel out, get their message out, on the good news, you know. And so, yeah, that's good. So I don't know when, you know, this first started, but we were talking about Asbury University, right? I think that's the name of the college.
I don't know how to pronounce it, but yeah.
I don't remember how to pronounce it either, but they basically had this revival going on, and it sparked. I think they might still be going. I'm not even sure.
I think they are. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're still going, which is amazing. And so basically, just what I've seen in my social feeds are other churches kind of jumping into that and saying, "Hey, we want to have, you know, a praise and worship time." And then their praise and worship time actually goes longer than they expected, which is amazing. But I also think it's good to know, that's what goes back to the conversation about knowing your congregation and your audience. I feel like sometimes there's a tendency and a temptation to jump on things that we think are trends because it gives you good social media coverage. And I'm not taking away from the spirit of God moving, because that's basically why we're here. But what I am saying is, it is important to know your congregation and where they're at. So I've seen some adaptations of this revival movement in Asbury and other like college campuses where they plan to have a worship night, and then the worship night may turn into something else, or they know that, you know, their church is a little bit of older congregation. So what they've done is they've done a morning service earlier than normal and just kind of extended. So they knew who they were actually, you know, talking to or catering to, basically. But the temptation is, oh, let's have the same thing that they have. And I think we have to be careful about that. Because that comes off as not as authentic as it probably should. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a fine line, and I'm not like, I don't want to get like all these comments about, oh, you don't believe da da da. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm basically saying, you know how when you see TikTok videos and they go viral, and then everybody starts doing that. And you're like, okay, that's not good. I don't like that one. And that one was okay. But I caution on jumping on church trends. I feel like if the Spirit of God is moving you to do it, great. But I also say that you have to know where your congregation is at. And maybe they don't need a revival right now. Maybe they need discipleship. Maybe they need to be plugged into small groups. Maybe they need a prayer time. Maybe they need, 30 seconds of, some teaching, daily teaching every day, just a way to remind them how to actually study scripture. Maybe they need that instead of the same thing as everybody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
but again, it goes back to the conversation of just being in prayer about it. And and I think as elders and shepherds or whatever your church calls, like you should. I think that's one of your roles is to know what your congregation, the needs of your congregation, and it's very tempting to jump on something like that, or as you said, like a viral TikTok or a viral reel, and not even and just be completely oblivious to this isn't working, or I'm going to continue just to do this and move forward. But I think the opposite's true too, is not jumping on social media, not doing these things when maybe you're feeling a push or a call. And I've worked in churches that have elders that are, you know, elderly, and they don't understand. They're not on Facebook. They're not on Instagram. They don't understand it, but they were okay with the fact that we were doing it because they understood that this is what my generation and a lot of people are on now. And I really appreciated that about them. And so I think it really is just finding what your church needs and then applying it. And a lot of it's trial and error too. You may try something and it may fail miserably, and that's okay, because then you just try something else. And that I get that can be really discouraging when you really feel like, hey, God told me I need to do this, and then you do it and it doesn't work out. But I think there's too many stories of God told me to do this and it failed, but I kept doing it. And then a year or two later, it blew up and it just kind of became crazy. I think that's a story. I think the pastor at the church I go to is telling me about that with Michael Todd, and how he felt God telling him, get all this equipment for live stream, and people were calling him crazy and he shouldn't have done this. And then one of his videos went viral, and then they kind of just blew up, and his message is out there now. And that took a while. It wasn't just something that happened overnight. And I'm thankful that God is incredibly more patient than I am, but I also understand I'm not patient. And especially in the realm of social media, we want something now. We want to go viral. We want to be big. We start it. It's like, oh, we only have 5 followers, and that's okay. You have to start somewhere.
That's 5. Yeah.
That's 12, yeah.
That's 5. And it doesn't matter the number. And that's the thing. That's a really good point I want to say too, is when you're starting your online church or your online congregation, or even if you've been in it for a little bit and you're still not seeing the radical numbers, that's what social media is. Like, if you work in social media long enough, you know that little bits of progress turns into a big snowball eventually if you're consistent. But I will say what you said about just hearing from God on what you want, what he wants you to do, and being in tune with him and being in line with what the vision is that he has for your church. I think it's key, because like you said with Michael Todd, he heard from the Lord before he did that. Do you know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like, oh, we're trying to go viral. It was basically like, this is what God is telling me. And so I think that's a lot of people's other churches' stories as well. This is what God told me, and I'm going to do it. And it's going to take a while for it to blow, or for not even to blow up, really, for it to catch fire, basically. Yeah. Let's just say that, for it to catch fire. And I think the expectations that we have going into social media sometimes tends to be really unrealistic. And I want to say that we got to be careful with that, because then that's the way the enemy creeps in and says, oh, well, you're not doing anything anyway, so don't do it. And that's not what we're saying. We're saying consistency is the key, but also know that it's going to take time to build anything. Like they say, Rome wasn't built in a day. Your social media presence isn't going to be built in 4 months, but unless you have
go all biblical and say the ark wasn't built in a day.
Boom, there you go. There you go.
Well, and I think too, with like going back to the Michael Todd example, I mean, going to the Noah's Ark example, a lot of times when God calls you to do something, it's not going to make sense. And it may say, okay, I've got this social media following that has 5 people, and it's been 5 people for a year, but I've been consistent. And then something just hits. And I don't mean, I don't understand why God does this a lot of times, but he calls you to do something. It doesn't make sense. And it takes forever, it seems like, but then all of a sudden it just hits and it makes sense to you. And it may be 5 years later before you see everything that came out of it. And it may just be one person who's following your social media who became a Christian or became a follower of Jesus, or who is maybe sending anonymous money to you. I mean, and to support your ministry.
Never know. Yeah.
You never know. And obviously we're not doing it hopefully not doing it for fame or money or anything like that. But
yeah, for sure.
It is just one of those things that I think, to go along with what I said earlier about, hey, you're going to get attacked by Satan. A lot of times that attack is going to be, this doesn't make any sense. Why are you doing it? Which you said a while ago too. So
yeah. That's so good. Yeah. Keep going, basically, is the message, is the overall theme. Keep going. It doesn't make sense all the time, especially God things usually don't make very much sense because we think we know what we're talking about, and God's like, no, I got it. So God things usually don't make sense all the time, especially to other people. But if that's where the Lord's leading you, then that's where the Lord's leading you. And who are we to say,
All right, well, I think that about wraps it up for us. Thank you so much for joining us here. We are ReThink Social Church, and you can go ahead and give us a follow. We're on Instagram at ReThink Social Church. And if you want to hear anything from us in the future, you can go ahead and leave it in the comments, anything about ReThink Social Church or social media in general. We'd be happy to talk about. Thank you.